Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. If it's possible, will you all be able to move one table forward? Each of you have been invited to join us today to celebrate the unveiling of the ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index 2022, a ranking of India's startups founded in the 2000s, worth at least $200 million, not yet listed on a public exchange, and most likely to go unicorn within 2 to 4 years. To set the tone for this afternoon's proceedings, may I invite Mr. Anas Rahman Junaid, Managing Director and Chief Researcher, Hurun India, to address this gathering and shed some light on the list of the hour. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shobhita. Very good afternoon, friends. I'm Anas Rahman Junaid, MD and Chief Researcher, Hurun India. On behalf of ASK Private Wealth and Hurun India, I welcome you all to the launch of ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Index 2022. Although I've met some of you in person, this is my first press conference in Bangalore, and I'm very glad to be here amongst you today. My heartfelt wishes and prayers that the rest of 2022 is full of happiness and good health for everyone. It is with great pleasure and pride that we release the ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index 2022. The report serves as a barometer to India's startup economy. For instance, the 1/3 of last year's entrants in Hurun India Future Unicorn Index have already turned unicorns. Very often, the progress in a nation's startup ecosystem is measured by understanding the unicorn landscape. This could sometimes result in not celebrating the stories of the non-unicorn startups. The objective of ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index is an attempt at understanding the journey of high-quality startups to unicorns. We believe that these companies have to be tracked and their stories celebrated. We have further classified the companies featured in ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index to Gazelles and Cheetahs. Gazelles are those companies that could go unicorn in the next 2 years. They just need to continue their growth plan. And Cheetahs are those companies that could go unicorn in the next 4 years. This is a point-in-time list based on Hurun proprietary research and direct feedback from the VC institutional investor ecosystem. ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index 2022 clearly indicates that the startup ecosystem in the country is growing at a never-before pace. In just 1 year, for instance, the number of Gazelles have grown by 59% to around 51, and the number of Cheetahs has grown up by 31% to 71. India's startup ecosystem is the third largest in the world in terms of number of unicorns and is home to more than 69,000 startups as of May 2022. According to a data provided by Union Ministry of Commerce and Industry. In the first half of 2022, India has given birth to 20 unicorns with a total valuation of $26 billion. It is indeed motivating for the startup ecosystem to receive the attention and interest of union and state governments towards startups. Some startups have been founded with founders still studying in college, and they've received good support from their families and teachers. It is good to see parents and teachers support them wholeheartedly. This is a welcome change in the mindset of Indian parents who always wanted their children to have permanent and secure jobs. Thus, it is even more important to highlight the stories of these companies and entrepreneurs to sustain this momentum of support from society and government. Let me also take this opportunity to share some of the findings of ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index 2022. We found about 122 Indian future unicorns from 25 cities. The average founding year is about 2015, with vast majority selling software and services and 17% selling physical products. 37% are B2B businesses and 63% is around B2C. And India's future unicorns are currently worth $49 billion, with an increase of 36% compared to that of last year. And these future unicorns employ around 82,000 people. And 15 of these companies are co-founded by women. IIT Delhi continues to be the fertile ground, producing the most number of startup founders in the ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index. The 22 founders graduated from IIT Delhi, and 13 are from IIM Ahmedabad. They did post-graduation from IIM Ahmedabad. Cumulative revenues is quite interesting. The cumulative revenues of companies featured in ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index 2022, it's increased by 65% compared to last year. And more than 1/4 of the Future Unicorn Index have active overseas presence. No, they're selling products globally. A couple of updates from last year. 17 Gazelles hit unicorn valuation this year, and 7 Cheetahs had double promotion. They skipped the Gazelle stage and directly became unicorn. The most valuable Gazelle is the logistics tech startup Ship Rocket, and the most valuable Cheetahs are Pepperfry and the payment infrastructure startup JustPay. Bangalore continues to be the startup capital of India. The city is home to about 46 unicorns, followed by Delhi and Mumbai. And who is the number one investor into these startups? Having invested into 39 future unicorns, Sequoia is the most active investor in the ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index, followed by Tiger Global with about 27 future unicorns. There are more interesting other information around ESOP pools, foreign headquartered companies, and so on in the list you can see in the report. More than happy to talk to you after the press meet. Let me also share some concerns that have risen in the recent past. The hike in interest rates, FD in US Fed, RBI, some of the governance issue that's happened in startups, talks of overvaluation and so on. There are some concerns in the global economy that can have impact valuations and capital raising ability of Indian startups. And we also see some layoffs and so on happening in the news every day. But we do believe that this could be a blip in the growth story in the short run, but the long-term potential of Indian startup ecosystem remains excellent and resilient. Number of future unicorns in the Hurun China Future Unicorn Index is around 430. For sure, India has some catching up to do, and there would be significant value creation and wealth creation during this catch-up phase. Many factors such as rising income levels, internet penetration, and so on will contribute towards this catch-up. Another important factor that would help in this catch-up is the advent of homegrown family offices. In the next decade, India is going to witness one of the biggest intergenerational wealth transfer. One classic example, as recent as yesterday, was Mr. Mukesh Ambani stepping down to elevate his son Akash Ambani. A couple of days back, I was in a dinner with a next-gen entrepreneur from a billionaire family. And I was just generally asking him about his investment and what does the family invest money and so on. So he was telling me that all of his investments are controlled and managed by his grandfather, who was in his mid-90s. And they invest only in fixed income. Right? So I asked him, then do you never invest into startups and high-risk asset classes? No, we don't have the flexibility, but we are setting up our family offices to start investing in startups. So this is a welcome change. And some of you might know I'm an active angel investor, and one of the things that I promote is to ask the entrepreneurs, the next-gen entrepreneurs specifically in my network, to co-invest with me in the startups I invest in. And some of these entrepreneurs who invested, they're also now started thinking about setting up the family offices to further do their startup investments. And this advent of family offices is going to play a huge role in furthering investments into startup ecosystem. And this is where, in this context, that I'm very happy to partner with ASK Private Wealth, who's the advisor to most of the wealthiest families in Hurun India Rich List, who could potentially be an influencer in furthering this India startup story. ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index is fueled by the data and research by Hurun and turbocharged by pragmatic, on-the-ground expert opinion from ASK Wealth. I would finally like to thank the venture capital funds and angel investors who has given feedback in finalizing the names of Gazelles and Cheetahs in ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index 2022. On this note, I would love to conclude by sincerely thanking you all for being here. I hope the ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index will give you a better understanding of India's Gazelles and Cheetahs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anas. This year, ASK Private Wealth has partnered with Hurun India in launching the index of the most valuable private equity or venture capital funded companies in India, founded post 2000, ranked according to their latest funding round valuation. ASK, a leading player in the asset and wealth management business and a true believer in the Indian growth story, has over the years grown hand in hand with its clients across the globe. A recipient of several awards, ASK Private Wealth provides wealth advisory and distribution services to the HNI and UHNI segment in India, focusing on advisory-led investment solutions. Mr. Rajesh Saluja joined the ASK Group in December 2006 to set up the wealth advisory and multi-family office business for the UHNI segment in India. And he has over 25 years of experience across sales, product, and business management in the consumer banking, wealth management, and private wealth advisory industry. May I now invite Mr. Rajesh Saluja, CEO and Managing Director at ASK Private Wealth, to kindly address the gathering. Over to you.
Thank you, Shobita, for the introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the press conference for the ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index 2022. As you are aware, India has emerged as the third largest ecosystem for startups after US and China, and saw a record 44 startups turning unicorn in 2021. New ideas and innovation which have the potential to benefit millions of consumers are being incubated by the startup ecosystem. At ASK Private Wealth, we are keen to build an ecosystem which supports, enables, and also honors some of these value creators. And this index is a step in that direction. We were very excited to partner with Hurun because of really the intent of this index. It really looks at which are the young and growing startups that have tremendous potential in the future. And also, these are actually the superstars of tomorrow who can become unicorns. This is a future-focused endeavor, and hence, I think it truly reflects the India story. We have entrepreneurs across extremely diverse age groups, with the youngest one being in the teens. There are many women who are chasing entrepreneurial dreams and running flourishing ventures. Also, you find a lot of success stories that are coming from outside the metros. And all this put together also brings a focus back on fundamentals, because as Anas mentioned, more than 50% of the startups are actually run by people who graduated from IITs and IIMs. The ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn list shines a spotlight on Gazelles and Cheetahs, who are the rising stars of the startup ecosystem. 17 Gazelles and 7 Cheetahs from last year's list have entered the unicorn valuation this year. Being a wealth manager of choice for us, this report is not merely a compendium of startups, but a reflection of how founders are creating value. The current scrutiny of valuations in this ecosystem, we believe, will help build more sustainable business models in the long term and will actually separate the men from the boys. I hope you will find this index and research report insightful, and we look forward to bringing you more insights in the future. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to attend the press conference today. And now I invite Anas to join me in unveiling the report. Thank you.
Now time for a recognition and celebration of the growth of the Indian startup ecosystem, the third largest of its kind across the world. May I request both Mr. Saluja and Mr. Anas to join me on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting this year's ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index 2022, a snapshot of India's startup ecosystem. Can we have a round of applause, please? Thank you, gentlemen. Next, to discuss the ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index 2022 and some key findings and insights therein, I'd like to invite back on stage Mr. Rajesh Saluja and Mr. Anas Rahman Junaid. As we get the stage ready, prepared for them, a gentle reminder to each of you who have joined us today that this fireside chat will be followed by a Q&A session. And I request each of you to make note of all your queries so that they may be asked at the end of this conversation. Let's just wait a moment for the setup.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time today. Thanks, Rajesh. Fantastic speech. Short and crisp. I'll start with the questions. And this is very interactive, okay? So I'm going to ask them, and if you guys have any questions in the middle, please, you can ask us as well. The first question, Rajesh, is uh, what we do at Hurun is we compile the list, we look at the data, we speak to the startup founders, we speak to the investors and so on. But what you see is, what you see firsthand through ASK Private Wealth is how some of these biggest wealth creators are thinking about allocating their wealth. And that's going to really drive this next 10 years of value creation startups. Because the next gen of these families, them setting up family offices, them starting small investments, them actively getting involved, that's going to play a huge role. So how have you seen this pandemic change the way investors handle and allocate the wealth, and generally and also specific to the future unicorns and startup ecosystem?
So as you're aware, ASK is a wealth manager for the high net worth segment. And in the beginning of the pandemic, most clients were risk averse. But as it sort of set in, I think there is a big change in clients looking to invest in new age businesses, either directly or through private equity VC funds. Because clearly they could see a lot of new businesses that are coming to the fore, and they're actually disrupting traditional business models. So there's a big change in trend for even the old economy clients to invest in new age businesses through private equity funds. The second thing that the pandemic also taught most clients is global diversification. So not investing all the money in India, but having some portion of their investments in the US and markets outside that. With regards the tech entrepreneurs who monetized, the younger lot who have created businesses or sold them or diluted some stake, we see their hunger for investing in startups still very, very strong. So while they monetize, there are 2 or 3 things they do. One is they fix an X amount of money as a safety pot for all their financial goals, be it buying real estate or anything related to the family. But they also keep a specific large amount of money to be invested back in startups. So we are seeing many tech entrepreneurs, monetizing their business and again reinvesting in startups.
Okay. What about the traditional guys? The non-tech entrepreneur. I think you touched briefly on that.
Right.
My question is specifically on this non-tech entrepreneur, somebody who's in the real estate sector.
Right.
And you might possibly agree with me. These real estate, they're very focused on real estate. They possibly the next thing they think when they have more money is to buy more land, right? So startups are really the bottom of the queue. Right. Those guys, how are they?
During the pandemic?
Pandemic, and are they thinking differently? Are you getting some kind of different messages?
Right, so pandemic also taught a lot of people to separate family and business wealth. Most promoters are very passionate about their own business and continue to reinvest back or have all their wealth in the business. But the moment you have a downturn in the economy, you always find promoters willing to diversify their wealth in such a manner that all of the amount is not linked to how their business does. So that I would say is the single biggest trend. Second, like I mentioned, over the last 2 years, most companies have leapfrogged their investments in technology because clearly how you want to serve your customers, how you want to deliver your products, everyone's thinking of investing in technology and digital service in a very, very big way. And that is throwing up a huge amount of opportunities in the startup space, which many of the old economy investors want to participate either directly or through private equity.
No, I agree with you. Yep.
Right.
And do you feel that the startup ecosystem in India has achieved the depth and maturity in tech support, mentoring, funding?
No, fair amount of depth and maturity, because you also have lots of second and third time founders who are building for India. And also the world is now looking at India to deploy capital. Plus, if you look at the ecosystem, there are lots of old economy companies that have set up incubators to mentor, guide, and support many of the startups. There are lots of private equity funds, global and domestic, that have not only gotten capital and funding, but also offer mentorship or support in areas like finance, marketing, etc., which many of these younger entrepreneurs may not have. So still a long way to go as compared to some of the more developed markets like, or I would say startup, ecosystems like Silicon Valley, etc. But we are reaching there.
And these startup founders, some of them have cashed out. How would they manage the wealth?
So first thing is to create a safety pot.
Yeah.
Because for many of them, they've not come across such large sums of money in the past, right? And I think many of them didn't realize how much of wealth they were going to create when they started this. With that amount of money in hand, the first 2-3 things they do is buy real estate if they don't have it, and have a house. Then second, they look at all the key goals related to their family, etc., taken care through a fixed income allocation. Third is, of course, a little bit of exposure to equities because they understand the need for diversification. But I still find a large amount of them still investing in the technology space or new age businesses in the startup side. Okay. Or participating with other funds for direct investment or co-investments in budding businesses.
Yeah. One of the things that I've seen in the cashed out founders is that they've been doing very high risk startups. The moment it's cashed out, now I just want to protect my capital. I'm looking at fixed income, inflation hedge, possibly dollar exposure. That's a trend that I've seen with a couple of startups.
No, it depends on how much they've got in that monetization, right? So some people who've got really large amounts in their monetization are willing to take that kind of risk. But the ones who've got smaller amounts, where, and I define smaller by, let's say, 50, 100 crores or 150 crores, they do create a large portion in as a safety pot. Right?
Okay. And what are the top three money tips you'd give a startup founder in asset allocation for a long term?
One, of course, is now that you've got some money monetized, get a fix on your financial goals and have a pot related to it. So buy your home, get your children's education fund in place. All that are key, very, very critical family goals first in place.
Participate in Shark Tank, maybe?
Could be. But at least get your key goals in place so that family is sort of taken care of. After that, the second is not to put everything back in startups. So diversify a bit, because most entrepreneurs get carried away by what the success they've seen and then put every money back in startups. So diversify into other growth assets. And third is don't try and manage money on your own. Hire a professional wealth manager like us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. No, I really believe the role of wealth managers in protecting the capital is so important this time and age. So that comes to my last question to you, which is basically the wealth creation by these first generation startup entrepreneurs is unprecedented. And we really hope it continues, because only if they create wealth, like you said, they back more companies, which will further create more wealth in the country. What has been the impact on private banking, this wealth creation by the first generation entrepreneurs?
So two things. One, of course, market has expanded. Earlier, wealth managers only would focus on the old economy type of clients. Suddenly, now you have a whole bunch of new, client base to target. Secondly, also catering to their needs. I think many wealth management firms have looked at how to serve their clients digitally, because most of these clients are quite tech savvy. So even the way the business models or the service models have changed for most wealth managers. And the third is the product platform itself. There are lots of many new kind of investment ideas that appeal to some of these new age business entrepreneurs that have come into fore, like pre-IPO funds, private equity, VC funds. These are all not only appealing to the old, economy clients, but even the new age businesses. So I would say these are the three things. Last but not the least, certain services which wealth management companies have started to offer, relocation to other, countries, especially for people who are expanding their business, tax planning, because most of these entrepreneurs haven't even had a chartered accountant, a proper professional chartered accountant who can handle larger wealth or larger investments. So some of those value-add services also have come into fore. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And these are some of the questions that I had. Right. If any of you have any further questions. I'll give you the mic.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Actually, Bangalore is almost double comparing with Delhi and Mumbai. What is a particular region actually? Always Bangalore is ahead of other states.
It's
What do you find?
yeah. I think you could also take it, but I'll give a first shot at it. See, it's more to do with the culture of creating new companies in Bangalore, starting with Infosys. So one of the things that these startups and the new economy companies do to a particular, to a country in terms of nation building is develop regional or develop micro markets or develop certain markets. So before Infosys and all these tech companies came in, maybe Bangalore was not known so much for tech, right? These guys started the business, they became big, and Bangalore essentially started becoming equal to Silicon Valley, which means that a lot of these tech founders, investors, and everybody started being in and around Bangalore. It became a perfect, fertile ground to create more and more startup companies in Bangalore. That's precisely why Bangalore has really taken the map. So, creating a successful company is a combination of a community, investor ecosystem, understanding a government who realizes that possibly these are the strength of the company because of the community and so on. So Bangalore had all that adding to the advantage. So that's why it will continue. Still, we have almost all the top founders who are based in Bangalore.
Absolutely. The ecosystem, the incubators which are there for supporting them, the entire history of some of the largest technology firms that started here. So you also get talent. You also have interrelated companies. When you set up a business and you're dependent on other businesses, you find a lot of them. So the entire ecosystem that has got created in Bangalore is one of the reasons that they are ahead of most of the other cities when it comes to startups.
Hi, this is Mini Tejasvi from the Hindu.
Right.
Your study has identified some 22 future unicorns, right? From 25 cities. So can you give us a city-wise breakup of this? And also, what is the time frame? Future in the sense, how soon? You also mentioned somewhere 2 to 4 years. Is that the time frame you're looking at?
Yeah, thanks. I think the detailed breakup of cities is in the report that is given to you, the press release report. You'll see the tabular breakup. But you'll see, maybe Vineet can help you. Timeline is very simple. I think it's again an estimate. The minimum valuation to enter the ASK Private Wealth Hurun India Future Unicorn Index is 200 million US, right? So that's the minimum this thing. So then we wanted to further classify and understand how much time would it take to become a unicorn for a sizable business. So basically, we've got two categories called Gazelles and Cheetahs. So Gazelles are those companies that could potentially become a unicorn in the next 2 years, right? And Cheetahs are those companies that could potentially become a unicorn in the next 4 to 5 years. Again, these are all internal research that we had, and we got feedback from VC funds, name-brand VCs in India who's been actively investing in Indian ecosystem, and we got it corroborated. This is the kind of estimate. So 2 and 4, but this could very well be skip. For example, last year 17 Gazelles became unicorn in 1 year, and 7 Cheetahs skipped the Gazelle stage and directly became a unicorn. So it all depends on the market conditions as well. Yeah, but this is a rough bit of timelines.
Okay, that's another question, that market condition you mentioned now, that there is a global recession also expected, right?
Yeah.
So how is that going to play up on the startup ecosystem and the investment flow and all that?
Yeah, hopefully global recession hasn't started yet, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But then it would definitely it'll have an impact. I'm an active angel investor myself, so I was speaking to one of my portfolio founder, and I was just asking him, how is it going for you? He's saying, for the first time, an investor is asking for net margins, right? Till now it's only been growth. Do you have a month-on-month growth, year-on growth? That's fine. I'm going to invest money, whatever, right? And the SaaS companies specifically, right, which were valued at a revenue multiple of 20 to 25x. Now it's valued between 12 to 15x. Even lower. So there is the valuation is definitely coming down, and there is an impact on the valuation as well, but you could possibly add some of the macro.
No, it's not only startups. The same decrease in valuations has happened with listed businesses in the tech space. If you look at NASDAQ, some of the businesses have corrected 40, 50%. So it's a typical trend that happens when interest rates go up and liquidity conditions tighten. But having said that, if the business model is still attractive, if there is a path to profitability, if the promoter has intellectual honesty about what he is doing, I still feel that valuations will be attractive. So temporarily, like in the listed space, you will see valuations come down. They've already come down. But going forward, if you just take a view of 5, 10 years, then you will see some of the good quality businesses still commanding high valuation. And we've seen it even in the listed space. Businesses like Asian Paints, Nestle with very high cash flows in high market conditions command sometimes 70, 80 Ps. And during tougher market conditions, they come down to 30, 40. But as then the economy picks up, suddenly again people start chasing good quality and growth. So it'll all be a function of quality and growth. But clearly one big change that has happened and will happen, because you will see interest rates tightening a little and monetary conditions becoming tougher, that the price multiple that people will give will be clearly dependent on whether there is a path to profitability, whether there is clearly a product market fit that the company has.
Yeah, just to add on to what Rajesh said, if I had unlimited capital right now, this could be a great time to pick up good companies, get attractive valuations.
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Nikhil. I'm from Money Control. So actually, I have a couple of questions. One is on the IITs and IIMs. Your data suggested that majority of startups, unicorns, come from IITs and IIMs. Don't you think that is something that doesn't need to be celebrated in particular, and rather should be? I mean, it's too centralized to start with, and given that the pressure already is there on kids, don't you think that's a bit skewed, the data? What do you think about this? What are your thoughts on that?
This is beyond my research domain, but I'll try to give you a perspective. The fact of the matter is, getting into IIT is possibly one of the toughest tasks in the world, right? Yeah. And getting into IIM, I'm one of those guys who, on my way to writing CAT exam, I decided to come back because it was very tough. So it is one of the most toughest things to IIM as well. So it is a fair thing to assume that in terms of at least from a let me use the right words, at least from the quantitative or yardstick that is required to get into these kind of institutions, and which will have a further impact on how they do their work. Yeah. This is possibly some of the smartest brains in the country, right? And since there is a perception that these institutes have some of the best brains in the country, it attracts a lot of attention in terms of right kind of network, right kind of ecosystem being built in these kind of colleges, which could be incubators and accelerators and a lot more global investors and companies trying to work with them and all that stuff. And they have a very powerful alumni who's doing extremely well in the rest of the world as well. So it's again a community, right? Sure. If other institutes with the support of government can build a similar community, it is a matter of time when other institutes also would bring out equal amount of startup founders. And can you add?
Yeah, so one is that you do have 50% from non-IIT and IIM. Sure. And of course, that tells you that it is diverse. And I think it's a function of the disruption that's taking place. Technology is disrupting business models or trying to find solutions to problems that exist. And because it is technology oriented, at the back end, there is a lot of mathematical modeling, and clearly people from IITs, et cetera, have an advantage, especially when it comes to fintech or certain other models which are AI dependent or machine learning dependent. There are algorithms, there's a lot of mathematics that comes into play, so some of them have an advantage. But having said that, you are also finding non-IIT IIM business guys who are probably hiring good quality engineers to make, they have an idea, but they're utilizing the engineering ecosystem or the MBA ecosystem to create a business. Yeah.
This skewed data sort of mars good ideas in the sense that, when you say 50% of, founders come from IITs and IIMs, the rest, the other half, do they get demotivated a bit? Because there have been instances where VCs have just rejected outright because of, because the candidate is not an IITian or an IIM graduate. So don't you think that sort of, affects it negatively rather than, celebrating that, 50% are from top institutions of the country?
No, I think it's about, as a VC, where I want to deploy my capital and where I see, lower risk and better quality returns. And sometimes people and their qualifications, it happens across industries. Some of those qualifications, or I would say, the creditworthiness of the promoter sometimes plays a larger role. But I don't think that discourages others. Maybe the journey is slightly tougher for them. But as long as there is a solid business model that is solving some problem that exists today, and the promoter is committed and has the background to deliver it, they'll get funding. There's enough and more.
Just to add to what he said, the first person who had $1 billion cash out in any startup from an Indian story is Divyang Thurakia. He's not an IIT for sure. I'm not sure if he's a dropper, but it's definitely not an IIT. Yeah. Then, I don't think the Kamath brothers of Zerodha, Nikhil is a dropout, Nitin is definitely not an IIT. So if you look at it, some of these amazing stories of startups are also not necessarily from IITs as well. So yeah, so just to give you some data points.
One more quick question. You talked about, so the data shows the next unicorns maybe.
Yeah.
How do you, so especially in a downturn like this, how important do you think are the valuations, and with startup founders, prioritizing profit, as you said, what do you sort of gauge? I mean, how do you assess the situation? Will startups continue to focus? Will VCs continue to focus on, say, valuations, or will there be a growth? I mean, a profitability will be a priority going forward in the next couple of years, maybe.
See, being
Others.
of course, if there is a business model that has the ability to solve or make client's life easier or solve some problems, first is the interest is high in those kind of models, right? Especially consumer tech. Then, of course, it comes to how big is the size of the opportunity? What's the size of the opportunity? Is it a very myopic, small area, or does it have the opportunity to really scale up and grow very, very aggressively? So you have various factors that you look at while evaluating whether it makes a good investment sense or not.
Sure, thank you.
Great.
Any other questions?
Good, otherwise we can interact over lunch.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen, for letting us lean into and glean in from your conversation. And thank you, friends from the media who joined us today, for all the queries that you raised your hands and asked. Kindly note that there is lunch being served right outside. Would be most happy to partake the same with you guys. So do join us for lunch. Also, please be informed that both our spokespersons will be available for media bites and interviews post this press meet as well over the course of lunch. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We truly, truly look forward to your covers on this list that mirrors the 2022 story of the Indian startup economy. Thank you very much and have a lovely evening.